Welcome into another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman here with maybe the most PFF top 10 that we've got, Dalton. The top 10 offensive linemen in college football entering the 2025 season. I said it's the most PFF list we have because really we're pretty much one of the only companies that has offensive line stats out there right now. So I'm really excited to break down all these guys. They were combining tackles, guards, and centers into one ranking. So this is the 10 best offensive linemen total in college football. Not the 2026 NFL draft, but the 10 best in college football right now entering 2025.
As we know, games and championships are won in the trenches, right? We just had it this past year with Ohio State and some of the struggles they had on their offensive line and then finding a way to fix it. But no, if you're not good in the trenches, offensive line will do defensive line as well in the coming days. But this is a really good group of players. And I think some that we're projecting out a little bit, some of them had great years last year. Some of them with just solid seasons that we're expecting them to take another leap with their talent level. But look, these are extremely important players to the team. As we know, you cannot win big games without a good offensive line. So these are really some of the stars of college football.
Absolutely. I think in the tackle class right now for college football, there's a lot of kind of unproven guys, but a lot of really talented guys. I think it's a loaded interior offensive line grouping that we have in college football right now. To remind you guys, this list was made a lot off of Tape Watch, obviously, too, but a lot off of PFF exclusive stats and data that's also available to you guys with a PFF Plus subscription. So go to subscribe.pff.com so you have access to all the stats that I had to make your own top 10 offensive lineman list in college football as well. Let's start off with my honorable mention offensive lineman. That is Connor Lew from Auburn. He's a center for the Auburn Tigers. Really good freshman year. He was named a PFF 2023 All-Freshman Center for us in that year. He followed up with a really good sophomore year as well for the Auburn Tigers. 76.4 PFF grade in 2024, fifth among all centers in the Power 4, and he was one of only 6 who had a top 20 grade as both a pass blocker and as a run blocker. He only surrendered a sack or a hit on 0.2% of his pass blocking snaps, tying for the 8th best rate among Power 4 centers. I mentioned before, Dalton, it is a loaded center class, especially next year, and Connor Lew is one of the best ones.
And I'll tell you what, we've talked about Auburn's weapons plenty. Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton, they're going to be able to run the football with Hugh Freeze's scheme, but there is nobody that should be Jackson Arnold's best friend at Auburn more than Connor Lew. 79.9 pass blocking grade last year, and that's really dragged down by just one bad game early in the season against Cal, so it would be deep into the 80s outside of that game. And you look at a guy who really, when you talk about the pivot and you talk about Jackson Arnold coming in there after just the awful pass protection he had at Oklahoma last year, the improvement he gets at Auburn and the way that he should feel protected, that starts with Connor Lew at center and then works its way all the way out to guys like Xavier Chaplin, who they got as a transfer from Virginia Tech out there at tackle. So look, he's playing behind a lot better offensive line. It's always good to have a really good center in front of you that can change those protections, can make things happen in the middle, and keep interior pressure out of your face.
And this is partly why I am really high on Auburn going into the year and why I think Jackson Arnold is a better quarterback than what he showed last year in his sophomore year at Oklahoma, because Oklahoma had one of the worst supporting casts in college football. In fact, they had the worst receiving grade in the Power 4 last year and the second worst receiving grade in the country. I believe only Kennesaw State had a worse receiving grade. A brand new FBS team had a worse receiving grade than the Oklahoma Sooners last year. So you obviously improve in that receiving corridor. Broke down my top 10 receivers list. They had 2 of my top 6 receivers in Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton Jr. there. So the receiving corps is a lot better than what he had at Oklahoma. And also Oklahoma had the 103rd highest graded offensive line in the nation last year. Dalton, we're getting into my top 10 units pretty soon. Auburn has one of my top 10 offensive lines in the country. So top 10 offensive line in the country, one of the best receiving corps in the country. I think Jackson Arnold could all of a sudden show why he was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school.
Absolutely. It's a supporting cast means a lot still for a quarterback, even for somebody as talented and as highly recruited as Arnold, right? So I think it means a lot just for him going to a brand new situation with primetime players at multiple positions, both on the O-line and out on the outside at wide receiver. It could be a big year for Arnold and the Tigers.
We see so many talented quarterbacks in college football and the NFL fail because supporting casts are horrible. I mean, Caleb Williams had a bad one at Chicago last year, and everyone thought he would come out of the gates and be an elite rookie. He didn't have a great rookie year, really largely because of that supporting cast, and also that coaches didn't really even watch tape with him. If you've read that ESPN article that came out last week, which is wild. And we see some quarterbacks thrive with great supporting cast as well, right? So supporting cast is very important, and Jackson Arnold definitely got a much better one going to Auburn next year. And the guy he'll be taking snaps from, Connor Lew, one of the best centers in the country. We got our boy Donnie in the chat, Dalton, who's a big-time Iowa Hawkeye fan. He says, I hope I get to see an Iowa boy on here. We got a couple Iowa Hawkeyes on this list, Donnie. Starting off at number 10 with Gennings Dunker, the right tackle for the Iowa Hawkeyes going into next year. Obviously, Caleb Johnson was a big part of why Iowa had a dominant ground game in 2024, but so is Gennings Dunker, man, right? So they still should have a pretty good ground game with him back as the road grader at right tackle for them. He had a 90.2 run blocking grade this past year. Only Spencer Fano had a higher run blocking grade than Gennings Dunker among all tackles in the country. So one of the best run blockers in college football. 90.2 overall grade for Gennings Dunker, was tied for 5th in the country as well. Actually, it was only 5th in the country. He had 7 big-time blocks. If you don't know, big-time blocks are our highest graded blocks in PFF system. That was tied with Spencer Fano for the 3rd most among Power 4 tackles. Powerful player, really good leg drive to pancake defenders. Got to get a little bit better as a pass blocker, but Gennings Dunker is absolutely one of the best run blocking tackles, one of the best run blockers, period, that we have in college football.
Yeah, plays a little bit tall, but I'll tell you where this comes from is the vast improvement that you saw from Iowa's offensive line last year. Like you mentioned, Dunker is not the only Iowa guy we're going to mention on this list, but the theme is Tim Lester as their new offensive coordinator last year, putting in the outside zone, the Shanahan-type run scheme, right? When you're talking about getting across defenders' faces, getting up on the second level if nobody's in that play side gap, and just mauling people. That's what Dunker does, and I absolutely love the way that he plays to the whistle. 92.3 zone blocking grade last year, also second behind Spencer Fano, and we'll talk about him a little bit later, but I think that's the idea. The way when I was watching Dunker again, he's a right tackle's right tackle, if that makes sense. It's just, he's one of those guys who just wants to get out there. He's got the mullet, he's got the mustache, he wants to maul people in the run game. He plays a little bit tall in pass protection, but I'll tell you what he gives Iowa off the edge and what he allows them to do off that right side, extremely important for a team that still is based in their run game and their defense. So he brings that nasty off the edge in the run game. If he gets better in pass protection, we could be talking about him pretty early in next year's draft.
Donnie mentioned a great point in here. He said, I actually met him before. He's about as Iowa as you're going to get, and that's absolutely true. If you haven't seen Gennings Dunker's headshot yet, go look it up. It's an elite headshot, man. He's got the mullet going on, the mustache going on. As always, a farm kid, Donnie says as well. Doesn't get more Iowa than him. And also, Dalton, I just looked it up. So this is the thing with Iowa offensive linemen in general, where a lot of them compete at the Salon Beef Days, right, which is a big festival down there in Iowa. And one of the biggest events there is the hail bay toss, right? So they toss a bay of hail as high as they can, honestly. And a lot of elite offensive linemen at Iowa have won that toss. Gennings Dunker is a back-to-back champion of that hail bay toss. He tossed a bale of hay 14 feet high in order to win it for the 2nd year in a row. So he's a freak, man.
That's just silly.
There's a lot of these guys. I think Linderbaum won that toss, won it a couple times. Tristan Wirfs, I believe, won it as well. So it's a thing down in Iowa, and Gennings Dunker also won that.
You should have just led with that, and at 14 feet in the air, I would have just gone, oh yeah, he's really good. Yeah, we didn't even need the numbers. All I needed was a 14-foot bale of hay toss.
It's crazy, man.
That's all we needed, man. Oh man.
Like I said, a lot of elite offensive linemen from Iowa's an offensive line factory, and a lot of those guys participate in that hail bay toss. And Gennings Dunker is one of those guys, man. He actually back-to-back champion. I know he won 2022 and 2023. Maybe he won the 2024. There's the headshot right there. Producer Eli, great producer Eli, pulling it up for it. There is Gennings Dunker right there.
Just an offensive lineman's offensive lineman. Yeah, for sure.
He rocks.
Fantastic.
We had him in our way too early 2026 mock because one of our viewers wanted to get him in there, and he also fit the 49ers really well in that scheme, but also partly because I wanted to get that headshot.
Kyle Shanahan would love him.
That's a first-round headshot right there.
For sure. It might be number one.
That's the number one overall headshot.
For sure.
Absolutely, right there. All right, cool. Gennings Dunker at number 10 on my list. Not the only Iowa Hawkeye, I should say, on this list either. At number 9, though, another offensive tackle. That is Aamil Wagner from Notre Dame, another right tackle on this list. So Joe Alt, Blake Fisher, both of them were top 60 picks in the NFL draft, and immediately after Notre Dame found a stud tackle in Wagner. He was the 3rd most valuable Power 4 tackle this past year, according to our wins above average metric. Only Spencer Fano and Kelvin Banks Jr. were more valuable than Aamil Wagner this past year. Wagner had a 78.1 run blocking grade, 17th among Power 4 tackles, and held up pretty well as a pass blocker, too. Only 2 sacks allowed on 496 pass blocking snaps this past year. It's kind of a underrated offensive lineman, I will say, for Notre Dame right now. A lot of other people are talking about Anthony Knapp, the true freshman left tackle. What a good year for a true freshman. And Charles Jagusaw as well. A lot of people like him for the NFL draft. I think Aamil Wagner is kind of going under the radar right now. I think he's absolutely one of the best tackles in America.
You know what it is? He's not that flashy. And I think the first thing we have to remember with Notre Dame last year is there was a big question about their offensive line coming into the season. I believe that unit only had 6 career starts together going into the season. So Wagner also in his first year starting, but he just consistently got better as the year went on. Some of the tougher teams to pass protect against when you think about Penn State and Ohio State and Louisville, maybe they got him a little bit in pass protection, but in his first year starting as a crucial part to this offensive line that you mentioned, it dealt with injuries on the other side, they had no issue at right tackle. And the more I was watching him, when I think about just that solid, consistent right tackle that might not blow you away, but he just is the same guy everywhere. I thought about Morgan Moses, a long time NFL veteran, Ravens, Jets, now he's in New England, hoping to stabilize that situation at right tackle too. That's who I thought about. I think they're similarly built, and you just have a guy who's consistently the same guy every week. Maybe he's not the best tackle in the country. Maybe he's not a guy that's got the big highlight reel, but I think he's so important for Notre Dame, and I'm curious to see where the improvement comes from here in his second year as a starter. Get comfortable. He's been through high-pressure situations, started on a national champion runner-up, right? Notre Dame's got high expectations again this year. I think this Notre Dame offensive line as a unit is in for a big year with everything they have coming back, especially off the edges with Wagner and those other guys you mentioned before on the other side.
Yeah, like I said, he's definitely not one of the guys that a lot of people are talking about for the NFL draft on that Notre Dame offensive line right now, but I think they should be, man. I think Aamil Wagner right now is the best Notre Dame offensive lineman going into next year, and what is a pretty good offensive line for Notre Dame as well. Checking in at number 8 on this list is the only player who is not eligible for the 2026 NFL draft, and that is Jordan Seaton, the left tackle from Colorado, who is only a true sophomore right now and could be probably is going to be OT1 in the 2027 NFL draft. So obviously the story about Colorado in 2023 was, they got Travis Hunter, they got Shedeur Sanders, all these great playmakers on the outside, and they have some talented defensive players as well, Travis Hunter being one of them. But the big problem with Colorado that year and why they went 4-8, they could not protect Shedeur Sanders. So Deion Sanders said, all right, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to sign the number 1 offensive tackle coming out of high school. That was Jordan Seaton. And immediately put this kid in as Shedeur Sanders' blindside protector at left tackle. That's a very difficult job. As good as Shedeur Sanders is, Dalton, and we love him, even though he went in the 5th round of the draft, as good as he is not an easy quarterback to block for, considering how long he holds onto the football, how often he breaks pockets as well. So Jordan Seaton, as a true freshman going out there, his body wasn't even fully developed yet. I believe he played at 290 pounds last year, which is not that big at all for an offensive tackle, but he still had a really, really good year as a true freshman. 75.3 pass blocking grade as well. Over 13 points higher than any other true freshman tackle in the country last year. And from week 3 to week 11, so 7 games in that stretch, he earned an 85.5 pass blocking grade with no sacks and only 1 hit allowed on 317 pass blocking snaps. Got to get a little better in the run game. Again, he's not as big right now, but I did hear he put on a lot of weight this offseason, so now he truly has an NFL body. He's only 19 years old, very high ceiling, and I already think this guy's one of the best pass blockers in America.
No, he is, and he had to get through a couple games of jitters his first 2 games against North Dakota State and against Nebraska, but you mentioned it. After that Nebraska game when Colorado, that was really their worst game of the season, he turned it on, right? Yeah. And you're talking about from week 3 to the end of the year, where did I just have the number, 79.2 true pass blocking grade, right? You take out screens and things of that nature. You're talking about that's the 16th best mark among all tackles in the country, and he had the 6th most true pass blocking opportunities because Colorado was such just a straight drop back team, right? That's how they won ball games, with Shedeur dropping back and throwing the ball downfield, and those are the hardest situations for offensive tackles to win. And by the end of the year, he was a top 20 pass protector in the country. So to do that as a true freshman with so much pressure on him, protecting arguably the best quarterback in the country on a team that runs the ball less than anybody else, he got better really quick, and he did a fantastic job job. You mentioned it. Add a little bit of size, maybe add a little bit of run blocking. That's really on the team as much as it is him. Yeah. You're talking about a guy who's a primetime prospect for 2027. He was the number one offensive tackle recruit coming out of high school, and now that's going to continue, I think. I think you're looking at one of the best tackles in the country, and maybe soon around him, as long as they build around him, we start talking about Colorado's offensive line being the strength for this team as opposed to the biggest weakness.
Absolutely, and I think it's a great point you just made right there, because yes, his run blocking grade wasn't that great, but also Colorado never ran the ball last year, right? And now you have a quarterback who's going to run the ball a lot, and Kane Salter, yeah, they're probably going to run the ball a lot more at Colorado. So actually, Dalton, Jordan Seaton played his freshman year at 285 pounds. That's light.
I mean, with his athleticism, if he could keep that, even if he gets to, say, 310, 315 at some point.
Well, guess what he is right now? He's 330.
I mean, if it sticks, if the athleticism and the footwork and pass protection sticks at 330, he could be number one on this list by the time the season's over.
He was 285, which you don't know. Usually NFL offensive tackles are around 315 pounds or so. It's kind of the average weight for an NFL offensive tackle. So 285 is 30 pounds lighter than an average tackle. So very light as a true freshman. Still had a really good year as a pass blocker. Now he put on 45 pounds of weight. So that is exactly what I wanted to see from Jordan Seaton. And now he's a legit 6'5", 330. It's an NFL body right there. So really high hopes for Jordan Seaton entering his sophomore year. And yeah, Shedeur Sanders is gone now, but they still have one of the best left tackles in America in Jordan Seaton, who right now projects as the number one tackle in the 2027 NFL draft. Will probably be the number one offensive lineman on this list going into the 2026 college football season. All right, number 8, Jordan Seaton for Colorado. At number 7 is, Donnie will like this, another Iowa Hawkeye here in Logan Jones, the center from the Iowa Hawkeyes. He was the highest graded center in the Power 4 this past year with an 83.6 PFF grade. He led all Power 4 centers with an 82.3 run blocking grade as well. And despite only weighing 293 pounds, which again is pretty light for a center, he's a powerful player and he gets to the second level with ease as well. And also, he's no slouch as a pass blocker either. He was 10th among Power 4 centers with a 1.8% pressure rate allowed this past year as well. So Logan Jones, the highest graded center in the Power 4, checks in as my number 7 offensive lineman in the country.
Boy, getting to watch him and Dunker both for this tape and just watching the outside zone clinic that these two put on, I think it's a similar element where Jones is an excellent zone blocker, a little bit undersized, but that's the advantage that scheme can give you as smaller players with athleticism, they can succeed, right? I mean, you think about the classic example of Jason Kelsey, somebody like that, right, who is just a little bit smaller but really athletic and can get where he needs to be. That's Logan Jones, and of course, he's got that Iowa brand of nasty to him. He's got to work on, to me, in pass protection a little bit, picking up stunts and just kind of working back across and back to guys crossing his face. But I think you're talking about a player who's been so solid for Iowa. Another year in that run scheme under Tim Lester, like I mentioned with Gennings Dunker, I think is going to do wonders for him. Certainly one of the best centers in the country. We're going to be talking about him next year in the NFL draft. And I think just, again, you mentioned it, the Iowa offensive line factory, it just keeps rolling. Yeah. Right? And I mean, I know they lost the run. Maybe they're looking to throw the ball a little bit more this year too. We can see him in pass protection with Mark Gronowski as their quarterback. But again, Iowa's they're going to want to run the football. You get behind Dunker on the outside, you get behind Jones on the inside, and a lot of good things happen.
A lot of people thought Logan Jones would be one of the top centers in the 2025 NFL draft. He decided to go back to school for another year, and he should be one of the top centers in the 2026 NFL draft too. Logan Jones is a stud athlete, man. It's very fun watching him get out there in open space and be one of the elite offensive linemen we have in college football. So number 7, Logan Jones from Iowa. I mentioned before, it's a loaded center class. Another one here at number 6. Iapani Laloulu from Oregon checks in at number 6 on this list. Really good flashes as a true freshman in 2023. In fact, he led all Power 4 guards that year with a 0.9% pressure rate allowed across 413 snaps as a true freshman that year. So really good true freshman guard for Oregon. And he played all over the interior for Oregon that year as well. He played at least 100 snaps at center, left guard, and right guard. So as a true freshman, so again, it's very hard to get on the field as a true freshman. He got on the field a lot and also played everywhere on the interior for the Oregon Ducks as well. So very difficult freshman year for Iapani Laloulu, and he still played really well, leading all Power 4 guards in pressure rate allowed. He became the starting center for Oregon as a sophomore and was one of only 6 centers in the Power 4 who earned top 20 grades as a pass blocker and as a run blocker. In his career, he is still not surrendered a sack across 720 pass blocking snaps. So Iapani Laloulu, guy who played a lot of guard in 2023, played mostly center this past season, and Dalton, he's just been an elite interior offensive lineman for the Ducks.
No, absolutely, and I really like they started him out this year at guard through the first game and a half, and then decided, you know what, I think he's going to be more comfortable at center. That's the best thing that could have happened for him. I think that's where he's most comfortable is at center. They can work around him on the offensive line, but you mentioned it, just an excellent pass protector. 80.6 pass blocking grade for the season, and the reason it's even that, I don't want to say low because that's still excellent, but one tough game against Ohio State the first time around, you take out that one game, that goes up to 86.3. So you're really talking about one of the elite pass protectors. And now for the third straight year, Oregon's going to have a different quarterback. It was Bo Nix and then Dylan Gabriel. Now Dante Moore, who's not as experienced as those two guys. Kind of like what I mentioned with Jackson Arnold at Auburn. You want that guy in front of you that's going to not allow interior pressure. Dante Moore should be extremely comfortable behind Laloulu. This is somebody I think is going to emerge, especially in the pass protecting side. He may be the best pass blocking center in the country. I think that's what you're getting at. And the fact that he does have that versatility to play guard if they needed him to is great, but I think they did a great job of moving him to center, leaving him there instead of moving him around. And Oregon, they do that too, where younger offensive lineman, when he was a true freshman, let's just get his feet wet wherever we can. Let's just get him some experience and figure it out while getting him game reps. They've done a great job developing him so far. I think there's another step to go in his development this season. He's going to be really good.
And that's why I have him a little higher on this list too, because I think you could play anywhere for an offensive line, right? You could play or anywhere in the interior, I should say, for an offensive line, like left guard, right guard, center for an offensive line. And I think that's what makes him so valuable. And the fact that he thrived in all three in only his first 2 years of college football, he should be one of the top interior guys to know for the 2026 NFL Draft as well. Before we get to the top 5 of my list, I'll talk about the sponsor of the show. That is Fabric by Gerber Life. What does your child's future success look like to you? A job they're passionate about, traveling around the world, or just being happy and comfortable? Whatever their journey, you can help make it easier to achieve with a kids investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life. By making a contribution to your child's future today, you can help give them the means to pursue their dreams, big and small. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Kids can't invest when they're minors, but a kids investment account allows you to invest on their behalf now, giving their investments more time to grow. It's all online, and setting up an account can take you just 5 minutes. Then you can manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. Start with just $20 with no contribution limits, tax advantages, and your funds are SIPC insured up to $500,000. Plus, no commission fees and just a low, flat monthly maintenance fee. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. Just meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. It's kind of MEAT Fabric right now. Don't talk about the big guys up front in the offensive line right now. Going to my top 5. At number 5 on this list is Kadyn Proctor, the left tackle from Alabama, who, Dalton, we did our way too early 2026 NFL mock draft immediately after the 2025 NFL draft. We had Kadyn Proctor going number 1 overall in that mock draft. So, freak athlete, man. He's a little bit lower on this list because I think as a prospect, he's a little bit better than what he is right now as a left tackle for Alabama. And he's been the starting left tackle for Alabama in each of the last 2 years. True freshman year in 2023, he took some lumps, but he also got a lot better down the stretch. And since week 8 of 2023, he has a 76.5 PFF grade. That is 8th among all SEC tackles. And he has some elite performances against some elite defensive lines as well. He has 3 games in his career against Georgia and South Carolina. The Iowa native has a 90.4 pass blocking grade in those 3 games with only 1 pressure allowed on 96 pass blocking snaps. He's a dancing bear, man. 6'7", around 360, 370 pounds. Preposterous movement ability at that size. And if he could play at a more consistent level as a junior, he's got the upside of being a top 10 pick in the draft, top 5 pick in the draft, and maybe even Dalton if the right team's picking number 1, like we had in our way too early mock draft. Could be the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're talking about a guy with just freakish measurables and athleticism, like you mentioned. And even early in the year last year, he was dealing, I believe, was it with an ankle injury early on that he missed the first 2 games he missed, and then came back and he was excellent. Look, there was a couple of rough games late, but, for the season, his pass blocking grade was around a 73. You look at it through week 12, it was an 83.5. So you're really talking about a guy who was hot, had a couple of bad games against Oklahoma and Michigan, and nobody could block Michigan last year, as we know. But I think you're talking about a guy who's got all the tools in the world. I think the technique needs a little bit of work. I think the hand technique needs a little bit of work, and just how to use his length to his advantage against even smaller, faster edge rushers. But the idea here, like you mentioned, is that if you've got a team that doesn't need a quarterback picking first overall or in the top 3 to 5 overall next year, and you just want that prototype tackle, and maybe even bigger than a prototype, that can do everything for you, especially in pass protection, I think this is the type of player. We have to remember, he's not even 20 years old yet, but at the time that we're recording this, he'll be 20 years old this entire season. This is somebody who's got all the potential in the world, just a raw prospect who's got to keep working on the technique, but there's nothing physically that he can't do on a football field. And look, I think you get into this list of these 5 guys that we're starting with here, or that we're getting into now, by the end of the year, they could be number 1 on this list, right? And Kadyn Proctor, I think nobody more so than Kadyn Proctor, just with the sheer ability and the build that he has. You just don't see guys like this come around very often. The one thing I wonder, too, remember when for about 2 weeks or whatever he transferred to Iowa and then he went back? Imagine if he was with these other 2 guys on that Iowa offensive line, too.
Easily the best offensive line in the country.
I might just run the ball every play. I mean, they do anyway up there for the most part. But, man, if you had Proctor along with Jones and Dunker and what they got going on there, it'd be fun. But, no, that state keeps putting out offensive linemen, but this one's at Alabama, and he could be really, really good, especially with the gifts that he has.
Absolutely, yeah. Donnie actually mentioned in the chat that he actually got blocked by Kadyn Proctor on Instagram because he said that his technique was a little raw, like you just did right there. So be a little careful when you're criticizing Kadyn Proctor. You might get blocked like Donnie did on Instagram.
Yeah, but you said Donnie's an Iowa fan. There might have been more that went
yeah. Donnie also said he played against Proctor in high school. He said he's a freak, just unreal. Southeast Polk, which is where Proctor played, powerhouse in the state of Iowa. They were around 6 to 7 Power 4 commits, and he was easily the best player there. Then I said his buddy went up against him, and he said that he got tossed around a little bit.
I'm sure there are certain guys. Sometimes you face guys at the high school level, either playing or coaching against them, and you just throw your hands up. You're just like, there's nothing I can do about that.
Just watch his tape, man, because he's 6'7", 370, and you would think for a guy that size, he could not move at that size. Like we've seen many other massive tackles before. DeJuan Jones is what I was thinking. DeJuan Jones, Ohio State, massive player, but man, his kick slide was alarming because he was too big, right? Proctor, he moves like a guy who's like 320 pounds, right? And so it's just crazy that he has that kind of size and that kind of movement ability. And like Dalton said, if he could improve his hand technique a little bit more, yeah, he could be a top 5 pick. And listen, we had the Giants picking number 1 overall in our way too early mock. They didn't really need quarterback or edge rush or something like that or D tackle. They kind of needed offensive line help, so we had Kadyn Proctor going number 1 overall. Like that's kind of the upside that you have with Kadyn Proctor here, that he could be maybe a number 1 overall or a top 5 or top 10 pick. Just with the athletic tools this guy has is wild, right? He's got some elite tape, like I said, against Georgia and South Carolina too, who have some elite edge rushers that could be first-round picks or were first-round picks, like Michael Williams was as well. So Kadyn Proctor, number 5 on this list. Number 4 on the list, another offensive tackle who could be a top 10 pick in next year's draft. That is Francis Mauigoa from Miami. He's been the starting right tackle for Miami since his true freshman season, and he made really solid progress as a true sophomore as a pass blocker. Only allowed 2 combined sacks or hits across 534 pass blocking snaps this past year, and he was the only tackle in the country with 2 or fewer knockdowns allowed on over 500 pass blocking snaps. So a lot of pass blocking reps from Francis Mauigoa, obviously with Cam Ward there as his quarterback, and yet he never really allowed Cam Ward to get hit either. 71.4 run blocking grade over the last 2 years as well. That's tied for 4th among ACC tackles. Some refinement needed in his game. Doesn't really move as well as Kadyn Proctor, even though Proctor is way bigger than Francis Mauigoa. but I think he's a little more consistent than Kadyn Proctor right now, which is why he's one spot higher on this list. And listen, Francis Mauigoa, a lot of people think could be a top 10 to 15 pick in the NFL draft, and I think he could be with another good year.
You talk about not getting hit or knocked down or sacked. I'll tell you what, Carson Beck's sure glad to have this guy in Miami after some of the struggles that Georgia had at offensive tackle last year. But you're right. You talk about a guy with a highlight reel sometimes, too, with Mauigoa getting out on screens, getting up on the second level. I think he can run. I think he can move in space. To me, there's a little bit of a lack of bend, but you talk about what he gives you on this right side. Is this the year of the right tackle? Is this already the fourth? Is this the fourth one we have on here? Right tackle.
Still have one more too.
Oh, and there's one more to go. Who's pretty darn good as well. But no, Mauigoa, I think a crucial piece to this Miami offense when you talk about, especially this year. Carson Beck doesn't move like Cam Ward. He's going to be in the pocket. When he's clean, he's great. When he's pressured, he certainly isn't. So I think a big piece of this is going to be Mauigoa and this offensive line protecting Beck, and then of course making the big time blocks that he can in the run game and even in the screen game, getting downfield. Is the famous block from 2023 against Louisville. I think there was another one against Virginia Tech last year, just mauling people in space. So he's got a ton of talent and he's got a ton of aggression. It's just a matter of the bend and the footwork sometimes that need a little bit of work, but he's really darn good and he's the foundation of Miami's offensive line.
Yeah, so I have 6 offensive tackles in my top 10 offensive lineman list. 4 of them are right tackles.
Gotta love it. I love that.
Listen, usually people think that usually your better tackle is your left tackle. We here at PFF want to preach to the choir is just like, listen, these guys are valuable either way.
Right tackles are people, too.
They absolutely are. Panay Sewell is probably the best tackle in the league right now. He's a right tackle, right? So right tackles are just as valuable as left tackles. And as you see on this list, a lot of the top guys in college football right now are right tackles entering the 2025 season. All right. Number 4 was Francis Mauigoa from Miami. The best guard in the country is here at number 3 in Armaj Reed-Adams from Texas A&M. Transferred to Texas A&M from Kansas, and he was second among all guards in the Power 4, only behind Willie Lampkin, who's now in the NFL, in overall grade, in run blocking grade, and in our wins above average metric as well. Powerful player, 6'5", 330 pounds, can thrive in either a gap blocking scheme or a zone blocking scheme. He led all Power 4 guards in gap run blocking grade, and he was 4th in zone blocking grade last year. So this is a guy, very scheme versatile player, dominant run blocker. I think Armaj Reed-Adams right now is the best guard in the country and maybe could be a first-round pick in the NFL draft.
Tell you what, exactly the example. When you talk about the rushing talent that Texas A&M has, Marcel Reed, Le'Veon Moss, Amari Daniels, now Kevin Concepcion even at receiver who can run the ball a little bit, but you got to have those big maulers up front. And Armaj Reed-Adams is the best one that they have. One of the best run blockers in the country at any position. Is he an A-plus athlete? No, he's probably a B to B-plus athlete, but in there at guard, you just think about the way he moves people. He can pull around and do it and function enough as a puller to get into all these power schemes that Texas A&M has. You mentioned it, a very diverse run game, and he's good in all of it. And I think even the teaching that he got at Kansas, who's known as a very good run blocking school as well recently, I think that all helps him. So I think you mentioned it. Scheme versatile, powerful, going to be a starting guard one day in the NFL, I think, especially for his run blocking ability. He's a lot of fun to watch. It's fun to watch this Texas A&M run game work, and he's a big reason for it on the inside.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's actually, of the 11 players we talked about today, he's the only guard on this list. So pretty easily the best guard in the country, I think, is Armaj Reed-Adams from Texas A&M. He's a dominant run blocker, like Dalton said. They've got an elite running back unit, and they have Marcel Reed who can run the ball as well at quarterback. They're going to be running the ball a lot, and also one of the best run blockers, maybe the best run blocker in the country, in Armaj Reed-Adams at guard for them as well. So the best guard in the country is number 3. The best center in the country is number 2, and that is Jake Slaughter from Florida. He was amazing in his redshirt junior year. He actually was number 8 on my interior line list the year before for flashing some as kind of like a backup for Florida. Then he was unbelievable this past year. Is now the best interior offensive lineman in the country. As you see right there, 80-plus grades as a run blocker and a pass blocker. The only Power 4 center who earned 80-plus grades as both a run blocker and pass blocker last year. And Dalton, the reason why I thought he was the best center in the country this past season, he faced a murderer's row of defensive tackles in the SEC on that schedule. We played Walter Nolan, Alfred Collins, Shamar Turner, Deion Walker, Omar Norman-Lott, Josh Farmer. All of those guys were drafted, I believe, in the first 4 rounds of the NFL draft this past year. He has an 85.8 overall PFF grade over the last 2 years. only Jackson Powers Johnson is higher among centers in the Power 4. Now Jackson Powers Johnson is with the Las Vegas Raiders as well. He moves very well, 6'4", 308 pounds. He could dominate any zone blocking scheme. I thought Jake Slaughter was the best center in the country this last year. I would have given him the Remington Award if I had a vote for that. I think you can make an argument he's the best offensive lineman in the country. I believe he's pretty clearly the best interior offensive lineman in the country right now.
He is just so darn sound.
Yeah.
Like, you just go through his tape, and there's not a ton of mistakes. I think the only thing left for him to do is just get in the weight room and get a little bit stronger, but that comes over time, obviously. I think you look at some of those more powerful players he played against, but you mentioned it. You just mentioned the murderer's row. Miami, A&M, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss. All those teams, he gave up one sack or hit. He didn't give up another hit outside of a sack to Ole Miss the entire season. So I think you're talking about a guy, how he sticks to his assignment. He knows where to be at all times, which is really what you want out of a center first and foremost, is to run the show and not make mistakes. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes. He's balanced as a pass blocker and as a run blocker. Florida is going to have a really good offensive line this year, with Slaughter being the first reason for that. That's what I see. When I watch centers, that's the first thing I want to see is that fundamentally sound style of play. Do you make a lot of mental mistakes? He doesn't make any. I'll be honest with you. He's just so darn consistent week in and week out. You mentioned it against the murderer's row of competition. He's the best center in the country. I'm with you. He probably was last year as well, considering the level of competition. Definitely is going into this year in a really good center class. This is a guy, I'll tell you what, we mentioned it, the center trying to be the quarterback's best friend. DJ Lagway doesn't have to worry about protections and things like that with Slaughter in front of him.
Absolutely not. And listen, it's kind of rare for centers to go in the first round of the NFL draft. I think Slaughter could be a first-round pick, man. Florida was very lucky to have him come back for another year because I thought he could have been one of the top centers in last year's draft as well. And I really did think this guy was the best center in college football this past season. And the fact that he's coming back to school for another year makes him the easy choice to be the top center and top interior offensive lineman on the board going into 2025. But at number 1 is the top offensive tackle on this list. And the top right tackle is Spencer Fano from Utah. He led all tackles in the country with a 92.7 grade this past year. He also led all tackles in the country with a 93.6 run blocking grade. In fact, that 93.6 run blocking grade was 3 points higher than any other tackle in America. Also, the second most valuable Power 4 tackle, according to our wins above average metric. Only Kelvin Banks Jr. was more valuable in the Power 4 than Spencer Fano, and Kelvin Banks Jr. was just a top 10 pick by the New Orleans Saints in the 2025 NFL Draft as well. 79.5 pass blocking grade, was top 30 among all tackles in the Power 4. Now, Fano's transition to the NFL is going to be a little interesting because I don't think he's long enough to play tackle full-time in the NFL. I think he's more likely a guard in the NFL, but regardless, he should absolutely be a first-round pick in next year's draft, and he was freaking dominant as a true sophomore, and right now I think he's the best offensive lineman in the country.
Yeah, we'll see if he ends up at guard or tackle in the NFL, but you mentioned it. You mentioned the highest run blocking grade in the country, the highest zone run blocking grade in the country. Like I mentioned with a couple other guys earlier, Utah's a big outside zone team. Fano's just dominant. He's a great athlete for his size. He gets to where he needs to be. He can cross face. He can get to the second level on linebackers with ease, and then he's got that finisher's mentality. So certainly Utah's going to be able to run the ball. And honestly, you look at Fano's pass blocking grades, really just one bad game, oddly, in their very first game of the year against Southern Utah. His pass blocking grade goes up to 85.5 if you take out that first game. So I think there's just a bit of oversetting a little bit, maybe due to that lack of length, like you mentioned, in his sets in pass protection. But no, the numbers at least say, we'll talk about prospects later on and which ones and what we're looking for, Proctor versus Fano and all that. But considering the year that he had last year, especially in the run game, no issue here with Fano as the number 1 guy on the list.
Love it. All right, that wraps up my top 10 offensive linemen in the country. Let's kind of recap for you guys. Honorable mention was Connor Lew, the center from Auburn. Number 10, right tackle Gennings Dunker from Iowa. Number 9, right tackle Aamil Wagner from Notre Dame. At number 8, another offensive tackle, left tackle this time, in Jordan Seaton from Colorado. At number 7 is center Logan Jones from Iowa. Number 6, another center, Iapani Laloulu from Oregon. Number 5, left tackle Kadyn Proctor from Alabama. Number 4, right tackle Francis Mauigoa from Miami. At number 3, the only only guard on this list, Armaj Reed-Adams from Texas A&M. Number 2, center Jake Slaughter from Florida. And at number 1 is right tackle Spencer Fano from Utah. Anyone do anything I missed on this list? Anyone should be higher or lower on this list? What do you think about it?
No, I think it's a really good top 10. I do. I think maybe I might consider, after I watched them both a second time, maybe flipping Proctor and Mauigoa, but it's a tough call depending on what you're looking for. But no, I think it's a really good list. And you know me, I'm always thinking about who are the other guys that maybe could work their way in there, as far as at least arguments. And there's some guys with some big-time potential. Caleb Tiernan from Northwestern's a really good player. Cage Casey from Boise State. Trey Zune from A&M. Isaiah World is somebody people love transferring from Nevada to Oregon this year. Xavier Chaplin, we mentioned, going to Auburn. And then, even inside, too, you mentioned the year of the center, the guys that you mentioned. Parker Brailsford's a guy from Alabama that we couldn't quite squeeze in. I know he's in your top 10 interior offensive lineman list. Brailsford's a good one. Connor Tollison came back to Missouri for another year. So you mentioned it. It's stacked at center. It's stacked at right tackle for whatever reason this year. It's kind of a weird thing that happened. Was a ton of right tackles, but I'm looking especially at a lot of these centers that we have, even some guys that weren't mentioned today. Really good class we have coming back next year.
So like Dalton just mentioned, I actually ranked every single position in college football in a top 10 list that's available over at pff.com. I actually did 2 separate articles, one for offensive tackles and one other one for interior offensive linemen. So we kind of combined the 2 into one video today and compressed it a little bit, but there are plenty more players to check out in those 2 lists. So again, check it out at pff.com for those 2 articles to see my top 10 tackles in the country and my top 10 guards/centers in college football as well, if you want to see some more of the top offensive linemen in the country. But Dalton, we are now done with the offensive side of the ball in college football right now. Now, next week, or actually on Thursday, I should say, we're starting off with the defensive linemen in college football. Top 10 defensive tackles in the nation entering 2025. And there's some really good players on that list.
Absolutely. I mean, it just feels like, is it starting to feel like receiver a little bit, where it's like, man, we're just getting good defensive linemen. Every team is looking for pass rushers and now even looking for run stoppers more than ever. And there's some specific teams with some stacked defensive lines as well. But look, we had a lot of good pass rushers in this past year's draft. We're going to get more of them both inside and outside this year.
Yeah, plenty more rankings coming on this channel. Next up is the defensive side of the ball, the top 10 defensive tackles in college football entering the 2025 season. For producer Eli back there, for Dalton Wasserman, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys on Thursday for our top 10 D tackles in college football entering next year.